You know that feeling when you walk into a room and you can just tell everyone's looking at you? Judging your outfit, judging the way you talk, judging that weird laugh you have when you're nervous. And even if nobody's actually thinking about you at all, your brain convinces you that they are. And it eats you alive. It stops you from raising your hand in class. It stops you from wearing the shirt you actually like. It stops you from posting the video, starting the business, asking the question, or being who you actually are. And I think most people go through their entire lives operating from this place, constantly performing for an audience that, honestly, isn't even paying attention. And I used to be exactly like this. I used to filter every single word before it left my mouth, wondering if it made me sound stupid. I used to not order what I actually wanted at restaurants because I was scared my friends would judge my taste. I know, it sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but that's how deep this stuff runs. And it wasn't until I hit a point where I genuinely stopped caring that I realized how much of my life I had wasted performing for people who were too busy worrying about themselves to even notice. So today I want to talk about why we care so much what other people think, why it's mostly an illusion, and what actually happens when you let it go. And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to see this whole thing differently. I think the turning point for me happened during my sophomore year of college. I had just moved to a new city where I didn't know a single person, and for the first few months, I was miserable. I kept trying to figure out who I needed to be to fit in with the people around me. I changed the music I listened to. I stopped talking about the stuff I actually found interesting because I thought people would think it was lame. I basically became a completely different person depending on who I was standing next to. And it was exhausting. Genuinely, mentally exhausting, having to keep track of 15 different versions of myself depending on the room I walked into. And one night, I was sitting alone in my dorm, and I just had this moment of clarity. I realized that despite months of trying to be exactly what I thought everyone wanted, I still didn't have any real friends. Nobody actually knew me. Because how could they? I hadn't shown them who I actually was. I had shown them a character I built out of guesses about what would make people like me. And that's when it hit me. All this energy I was spending trying to be liked was actually the exact thing preventing me from being liked. So here's the thing nobody tells you about caring what other people think. It doesn't actually protect you from judgment. It just guarantees that the version of you people end up judging isn't even the real one. Think about that for a second. You're out here stressing, filtering, performing, second-guessing every move. And for what? So that people can approve of a fake version of you that you built out of fear. That's not protection. That's just a more exhausting way to lose. And I think a lot of this comes from how we are wired as humans, honestly. Thousands of years ago, being disliked by your tribe could get you kicked out, and getting kicked out could get you killed. So our brains developed this deep, primal fear of social rejection because it used to actually be dangerous. But here's the problem. Your brain doesn't know the difference between getting exiled from a tribe in the wilderness and someone leaving a mildly weird comment on your Instagram post. It reacts the exact same way. Heart racing, stomach dropping, brain spiraling. Except now, the stakes are basically zero. Nobody's coming to physically harm you because you posted a picture with a caption that wasn't funny enough. But your nervous system doesn't know that. So it treats a stranger's opinion like a survival threat. And once you understand that, you start to realize how absurd it actually is to let some rando's passing thought about you control your entire life. And speaking of strangers, let's talk about the actual math here for a second. Did you know that the average person spends about 60% of their conscious thoughts thinking about themselves? Not about you, not about what you said at the party last weekend, not about that thing you're embarrassed you did in front of them 3 years ago. Themselves. Their own bills, their own relationships, their own insecurities, their own version of the exact same spiral you're going through about them. Everyone is so deep inside their own head that they genuinely do not have the bandwidth to be dissecting your every move the way you assume they are. This isn't some feel-good platitude. It's basically just statistics. You are living your life terrified of an audience that, for the most part, doesn't exist. And even the people who do notice something about you, they forget about it almost instantly, because they're too busy worrying about whether people are judging them too. Now, Social media obviously makes all of this about 1,000 times worse. Because it's not just about the people around you anymore, it's about a theoretical audience of thousands of strangers who could see anything you post at any time. We've built an entire economy around convincing you that you need to look a certain way, act a certain way, and say the right things or you'll get torn apart in the comments. And these platforms profit off keeping you anxious, because anxious people scroll more, engage more, and buy more stuff to try and fix the insecurity that the platform itself created in the first place. It's honestly kind of a genius, evil business model when you think about it. Manufacture the wound, then sell you the bandage. And it's not an accident that the generations who grew up with social media report the highest rates of anxiety and loneliness in recorded history. We are more connected than ever, and somehow more afraid of being seen than ever too. But here's the paradox, and I promise this is the part that actually changes things. You cannot become genuinely likable by trying to be likable. The second you start performing for approval, people can feel it, even if they can't explain why. Ever met someone who was trying so hard to be cool or funny or impressive that it made you feel kind of uncomfortable being around them? That's what happens when you build your personality around what you think other people want. It comes off as fake, because it is fake. And on the flip side, think about the most magnetic people you know in real life. I'd bet almost all of them share one thing in common. They don't seem to be trying to impress anyone. They just are who they are, and somehow that confidence makes people want to be around them more. Not because they're chasing approval, but because they've stopped needing it. That's the paradox. The less you chase being liked, the more likable you actually become. So let's actually get into how you do this, because I know saying just stop caring is easy to say and incredibly hard to do. This isn't a light switch. It's a practice. First, separate your identity from your image. Your image is the story you think other people have about you. Your identity is who you actually are when nobody's watching. Most anxiety about judgment comes from protecting the image instead of living from the identity. Start asking yourself in moments of hesitation, am I about to do this because it's true to who I am, or because I'm scared of how it looks? That one question alone will save you from 1,000 unnecessary spirals. Second, do something small and mildly uncomfortable on purpose. Wear the shirt you like but we're scared to wear. Order the weird thing on the menu. Sing along in the car with the windows down. Post the thing without overthinking the caption for 20 minutes. These might sound stupid, but you're training a muscle. Every time you do something slightly vulnerable and the world doesn't end, your brain slowly starts to unlearn the fear. Confidence isn't something you think your way into. It's something you build through small representatives of doing the uncomfortable thing anyway. Third, get comfortable with being misunderstood. This one's big. Not everyone is going to get you. Not everyone is going to like you. And that's not a flaw in the plan, that's just math. You are not for everyone, and trying to be is the fastest way to become nobody. The people who are actually going to matter in your life, the real friendships, the real relationships, the real opportunities, they show up once you stop diluting yourself trying to be universally likable. Fourth, remember that judgment says more about the judge than about you. When someone has something negative to say about you out of nowhere, it's usually a reflection of where they're at, not an objective truth about who you are. Hurt people project. Insecure people criticize. It's rarely actually about you, even when it feels personal. And fifth, surround yourself with people who like the real version of you. This sounds obvious, but a lot of people never actually do it because they're scared to show the real version in the first place. But once you do, and you find your people, you'll realize you never needed the approval of everyone. You just needed a few people who actually see you. Now here's where I want to tie this back to something personal, because I think it matters. The version of me who used to filter every word, hide every weird interest, and shapeshift depending on the room, that guy never actually made real friends. But the version of me who eventually just said, screw it, this is who I am, take it or leave it, that guy ended up building actual friendships that have lasted years. That guy started a YouTube channel, sharing thoughts that I used to be too scared to say out loud because I was worried people would think they were dumb or too vulnerable. And weirdly enough, that's the exact thing that ended up connecting with people. Not the performance. The honesty. If I had kept performing, none of that would exist. I wouldn't have the friendships I have now. I wouldn't be making this video. And I definitely wouldn't be reaching people who needed to hear this exact message today. It's all connected. One decision to stop performing cracked open everything else. So here's the takeaway I want you to walk away with. Nobody's thinking about you as much as you think they are. And the people who are thinking about you, the right people anyway, are going to like you more, not less, once you stop performing for them. Stop editing yourself down to something smaller and safer just to avoid a judgment that, statistically, probably isn't even happening in the first place. I know there's a lot of these self-improvement channels out there telling you to just be confident, without actually explaining why that's so hard or how to get there. I'm trying to make this one a little different, sharing the actual stuff that changed things for me, not just surface-level advice. This might not apply to everyone watching, but if it helped even one person stop shrinking themselves today, I consider that a win. So if it did, let me know in the comments. I'd genuinely love to hear it. And that's it for today's talk, and we'll talk again soon.